The little monk's Buddhist heart was shaken. The moment he climbed over the statue of the Buddha was also the moment he broke the precepts he had guarded for 15 years. From then on, the two would often secretly meet behind the mountain, even daring to flirt with each other right in front of the master. One night, they sneaked out for a late-night meal. Afterwards, too tired, they embraced each other and fell asleep on a boat. It was then that the master discovered their affair. He said nothing. Instead, he released a large rooster onto the boat, tying a rope to its leg and pulling the boat back to shore. Then he removed the plug at the bottom of the boat, letting the cold water flood in to awaken the two lovers. Startled, they hurriedly scooped water out with their shoes. Realizing his wrongdoing, the little monk knelt before his master, begging for forgiveness. But the master did not scold him, he only decided to expel the young woman from the temple. No matter how much the little monk pleaded, he could not change her fate, she was sent away. Without her companionship, every night he tossed and turned, unable to sleep. Finally, unable to bear the longing, he buried the Buddha statue in the temple and secretly set out to find her. What he did not know was that the master had already foreseen everything. And yet, the master did not stop him, for he understood clearly, the little monk had not yet let go of his worldly desires. The little monk had lived with his master in a temple on the lake since childhood, completely isolated from the outside world. Only when the master went out did the boy have a chance to wander a little. One morning, as the master prepared to leave, the little monk skipped along behind him, shouting that he wanted to gather herbs. The lonely boat in the middle of the lake suddenly grew lively with the boy's youthful energy. He was like a sprout breaking through the soil, an embodiment of spring itself. The master smiled gently, rowing slowly across the water. The little monk sat quietly, watching, sometimes imitating his teacher's strokes. Soon, they reached the shore. At the gate, the master reminded him over and over to beware of snakes, like a prophecy. And indeed, the little monk soon encountered a snake in the grass. Yet he felt no fear. Grabbing it with one hand, he flung it aside. For him, at that moment, only two things mattered: gathering herbs to bring back, and perhaps playing a little along the way. As he climbed the mountain, picking herbs, he also played. On the slope stood a towering Buddha statue. The little monk hid behind it, gazing down with innocent eyes. The green of the trees glowed with fresh vitality. And where his gaze fell was the familiar temple. Usually, the temple of bricks and tiles seemed immense to the small boy. But now, against the vast lake, it looked tiny and fragile. This strange vision was like a seed planted in his heart. Before long, teacher and student finished their tasks and reunited at the temple gate. On the boat ride back, the little monk chattered endlessly, proudly asking for praise, boasting about the many herbs he had collected. But what he did not realize was that among them were poisonous plants. He was confused, they looked identical. The master patiently taught him, if you look closely, the poisonous ones have a white line at the root. Their conversation seemed to be about herbs, yet it was truly about the Dharma. Good and evil are separated by just a single thought, divided by an unseen yet undeniable line. The master was wise, but the little monk could not yet distinguish. Their contrast was stark. The boy never imagined this casual exchange would foreshadow his destiny. Back at the temple, life was peaceful once again. The little monk chased dogs, fought fish, rowed boats, climbed trees, and sometimes napped with crossed legs under the eaves. Time in the mountains flowed slowly. Those beautiful days felt as though they would never end. All sorrows were kept outside the narrow wooden gate. That day, the boy once again rowed his boat across the lake, climbed the hillside, slipped past the jagged rocks, and stepped into another world. The brook murmured, the forest that had been silent through winter slowly awakened, and tiny fish wagged their tails, swimming freely in the crystal water. The little monk caught a fish and tied a stone to its body. Then caught a frog and bound it to the same stone. Even a snake passing by was seized and tied to a rock as well. The fish sank under the weight, the frog struggled helplessly, the snake dragged itself forward in agony, and the boy, with his baby teeth showing, laughed in delight. But the master had seen it all. He said nothing, only picked up a heavy stone and left in silence. At midnight, he tied that stone to the boy's back. The child squirmed in discomfort, pleading to be freed, but the gentle master suddenly grew stern. He rebuked the cruelty of the previous day and ordered the boy to find those creatures and release them himself, promising only then would he be freed. The little monk stumbled through forest and stream, searching everywhere, only to find the frog, half alive. The fish and snake were already dead. The snake's death was pitiful, its blood soaking deep into the soil, each final crawl filled with unbearable pain. At the sight, the boy broke down and wept bitterly. From high above, the master watched in silence, his eyes heavy with thought, ending only in a sigh. He had once said that if those creatures perish, a man will forever carry a great stone in his heart. That stone is karma. Once shouldered, a lifelong path of hardship begins. And so, in the boy's endless tears, spring came to an end. The world may hold many springs, but youth comes only once. He had stepped beyond innocence, growing into a youth. He pushed open the door to greet summer. He was no longer the innocent child of yesterday. Watching snakes entwined in the grass, a strange new sensation surged in his heart, like a crashing wave stirring restless desire. That feeling reached its peak when he met the girl from afar. As if fate had drawn her, he climbed the mountainside once more, stood beside the great Buddha statue, and gazed into the distance. This time his eyes fell on a narrow road, the path leading back to the temple, the bridge between the mortal and the sacred. His inner world widened. From afar, he saw two figures, a weary mother and daughter, guests of the temple. The mother's face was heavy with sorrow, the daughter pale and coughing endlessly. They came simply to pray for the girl's health. The mother admired the boy's vitality, and seeing the frail girl, he pointed to an ancient tree. "You will be like this tree, 300 years strong. You will live long and healthy, steady and unyielding." It was both a blessing and a heart skipping its first beat. From that moment, his vague longings took clear form. The master welcomed the two, leading them in prayers. At midnight, the mother still knelt devoutly, while the daughter lay pale, her forehead wet with cold sweat. The little monk rose quietly, watching in silence, his pity deepening. He comforted the mother, saying, "If her heart finds peace, her body will heal." Though reluctant, she left her daughter behind at the temple to recover. At first, the girl struggled with the temple's ways, once sitting casually on a stone statue beneath the eaves. The boy hurried to stop her, and when she left, he gently wiped the statue clean. At that time, reverence for the Buddha and devotion to his master still outweighed worldly desire, but it was only for a while. The summer rains fell without end. The girl sat quietly in the rain, gazing into the distance, until suddenly a canopy appeared above her, proof that the boy's heart had stirred. She turned back with a gentle smile, and tender feelings crept in with each drop of rain, weaving between their young hearts. And with love came desire, the accidental glimpse as she dressed, buttons fastened one by one, her white hem, her slender bare legs, her careless sleeping form, his trembling hand reaching through the thin blanket, a burning slap, a guilty caress, fearful regret. The master's question, "Why do you pray for desire?" burned in his chest with shame, for prayer was only self-deception. They rode together through the mountains to the familiar stream. Her eyes sparkled at the darting fish, while his gaze clung only to the curves of her body. He climbed a rock to steal a glance, and suddenly water splashed, and the girl cried out in alarm. Before she could react, the little monk had already caught a small fish for her. Her heated skin was covered in cool droplets of water, and when their fingers touched, the air grew warmer. As his hand slowly slid downward, the girl seemed to awaken from a dream, suddenly crying out before turning to flee. At night, their eyes met through the Buddha statue, as though it shook the hearts of them both. The little monk, burning with unrestrained desire, and the girl, torn between anger and shyness, both carried a mix of shame, panic, and a confusing thrill. Afterward, he still gathered herbs for her every day, but gradually his emotions could no longer be contained. Even the way he ground medicine became rough and impatient. He rowed his boat with furious energy, as if trying to exhaust himself, yet the girl still sat beside him, her gentleness only deepening his turmoil. Suddenly, the boy leapt into the water and disappeared. Alarmed, she peered down, only for him to suddenly rise up and pull her in with him, both of them drenched. But instead of taking her back to change clothes, he led her through the gateless arch into the forest. The water shimmered, mandarin ducks played at the stream's edge, and together they crossed the boundary of innocence. From that moment, the little monk completely broke his vows, his Buddhist heart was in chaos. Returning to the temple, guilt weighed on him so heavily that he even forgot to tie the boat. Though the master sensed something, he asked no questions. From then on, their acts became bolder, their boundaries increasingly erased. Even in the deep of night, the boy would slip past his master's quarters to crawl secretly beneath the girl's blanket. He no longer kept the distance between man and woman, even moving the stone statue from the doorway into her room, cleaning it carefully before letting her sit upon it. A damp summer breeze stirred the two young hearts, and strangely, as love grew, the girl's fragile body began to recover. Her complexion bloomed, her eyes shone with a radiant smile. The master watched them laugh together, and perhaps in his heart, he already knew, yet he remained silent. At that time, the boy was wholly consumed by love, willing to surrender everything. His obsession frightened even himself, for the mere thought of separation was unbearable. Passion and desire spread wildly, like summer weeds covering the mountain. A dangerous thought took root, he wanted to preserve that moment forever. But the seasons change, and summer too must pass. Whether pure love or desire, human impulse is as fleeting as mist that vanishes. In the end, the master discovered their secret. The little monk knelt in tears before the Buddha, begging for forgiveness. The master understood well that love and desire were part of human nature, but for a monk, breaking vows was the gravest of sins. And so, he decided to send the girl away. The boy sobbed and pleaded, but the master did not yield. Sternly he warned that once the heart craves possession, disaster will follow. Yet the boy did not heed his master's words. He left not only with a small Buddha statue, as if to prove he still carried the Dharma in his heart, but also with gratitude for his master's care. He even released the temple rooster back into the forest, as though his own yearning for freedom were set loose with it. Facing his disciples' departure, the master did not stop him, for he knew this was the trial destined for the boy. No 1,000 sermons or 10,000 teachings could equal a single fall into the world of dust. Whether blessing or curse, clarity or delusion, only time would tell. After the little monk's departure, the master lived as before. When the temple gates opened once more, summer had ended and autumn arrived. Red and golden leaves reflected on the water, scattering their final brilliance before decay. It is said that at the height of abundance begins decline. Autumn is the season of harvest, but also the beginning of withering. That day, the master returned from alms with a kitten he had found at the temple gates. He gently cradled it, then unwrapped a parcel of rice cakes wrapped in newspaper. Just as he was about to eat, his eyes fell upon the print, a wanted notice. It was his disciple, now a fugitive in the mortal world, accused of cruelly murdering his wife. And that dead woman, perhaps she was the same girl from years ago. The master lifted his gaze to the sky as the wind bells chimed beneath the autumn eaves. He quietly folded the newspaper, fetched his disciple's old robes, and carefully stitched the frayed seams. Each stitch carried unending sorrow, as though mending the broken years themselves. From the moment he saw that notice, the master knew, his disciple would return. Burdened with heavy sins, the little monk had nowhere else to go. The mountain temple was where he had begun, and it was also the only path left to return. Compared to the day he left, his appearance was completely changed. Before long, he stood once more before the temple gates. From across the lake he saw his master. The old man rode out to meet him, and with one gentle phrase, "You have grown," it was as if time's folds had been smoothed away. Yet the boy avoided his master's gaze. The small boat drifted upon the endless water. Everything had changed, and yet nothing had. On the shore, the master held his cat in his arms as he walked toward his disciple. Old and young, they sat again together at the lakeside after so many years. The master wished to know what the boy had endured, but the young man would not share. Instead he was tense, restless, and full of rage. For he could not accept that the wife he had loved for years had fallen for another man. In his fury, he had taken her life. Now he seemed less a repentant sinner than a betrayed soul thrashing in pain. He shouted at his master, "Why? Why must it be so?" The old man replied gently, "Such is the mortal world. Not all things bend to our will. That which you love, others may also love." But the words did not reach him. Burdened with his rage, he returned the small Buddha statue he had once carried away. Yet beneath that symbol of compassion, he had hidden a blood-stained dagger. With violent anger he drove it into the floor, leaving deep scars in the wood, marks of his hatred made flesh. At night, fear came too late. His eyes wide, his heart unsettled, he could not sleep even within the temple's sanctuary. He rode across the lake, climbed the mountain, and collapsed into the stream that had once held so many memories, crying out like a lost child for his master. But the master knew, the river of life must be crossed by oneself. In despair, the boy resolved to end it all. He wrote the word close upon paper and sealed his eyes, nose, and mouth. Kneeling before the Buddha, he sought death to silence everything. Yet instinct clung to life, and in his struggle the master burst through the door, furious, striking him with a staff until his skin split. Sometimes an ending is nothing more than fleeing responsibility. The master saved him, but bound him with ropes to the beams of the temple. His bloodied wounds bared, his soul was being forged in agony. Outside, the master traced the Prajnaparamita Sutra into the dirt with his staff. When the ropes burned through and he fell, the boy, through tears, took the bloody dagger and shaved his head, each lock of hair severing ties to the past. Opening the door, he saw the scripture etched across the ground, and the master told him, "Carve these words into being. With each stroke of the blade, you will find your way. One scroll each year. Slowly, anger will fade." The autumn wind rose as the boy knelt, carving fiercely, each stroke following his master in silence. No words were spoken between them, only the rarest stillness. But the police arrived to arrest the fugitive. Calmly, the master welcomed them. As soon as they stepped ashore, weapons clashed, but the old man's voice cut through the tension. "What are you doing?" "Continue carving." The boy hesitated, then slowly obeyed. The master explained softly to the policeman, carving scripture would restore peace to his disciple's heart. At last, they agreed, he could finish by dawn. At first, the crack of gunfire in the distance distracted him, but soon he gave himself wholly to the task, pouring blood and tears into every cut of the blade. Through the long night he carved, until one policeman even raised a candle to light his work. At sunrise, he carved the final stroke and collapsed to the ground. Gently, one officer draped a coat over him. The cursed blade, once soaked in sin, was now stained with the blood of its wielder. Life and death, love and hatred, each bound by flesh and blood. In exhaustion, the boy found his first peaceful sleep. While he rested, the master ground pigments and, with the officers, colored the sacred text. When the boy awoke, he was overwhelmed by the sight before him: redemption, purification, salvation. And so, in the chill wind of autumn, his soul cleansed, the little monk rose and calmly followed the policeman, beginning the path of atonement in prison. Strangely, no matter how they rowed, the boat did not move, until he turned to look back. Only after his master raised a hand in farewell did the boat slowly drift away. Watching the disciple he had raised now leave burdened with sin, the master's heart overflowed with grief. After they departed, the kitten returned to the forest, the gateless gate closed, and under the master's gaze, the boat that had borne them away turned back of its own accord to the temple. That day, the master sat long before the gate. As his eyelids grew heavy, he wrote a few words upon a blank sheet. Removing the robe he had worn for decades, he placed a candle on the wooden boat, built a high pyre, and sealed his 7 orifices with the paper marked close. Then he sat upon the stacked wood and let it drift into the lake. The candle at the boat's base caught the fire, flames rising even as cold water poured in. And with that flame, he erased his body. The sins of the disciple dragged his master's 15 years of cultivation back into the dust of the mortal world. After the master entered the cycle of reincarnation, a small snake swam up from the bottom of the boat and slipped straight into the temple. When the temple gates opened again, the lake was frozen thick, the forest eerily still, all life extinguished. The boy who had once been imprisoned had now grown into middle age. He pressed his palms together in reverence, bowing before the gate. The temple, long untended, was in ruins. Opening the door, he saw the little snake emerge from his master's old robe, and in that instant, he understood everything. He put on the robe, lit a white candle, and walked out onto the frozen lake. Breaking through the ice, he found his master's charred remains on the burnt boat, then carved a Buddha from the ice itself, enshrining the relic within a red cloth at its brow. The glacier water flowed ceaselessly, the crystal statue pure as the temple once had been. When all was done, he cut a small hole in the ice, washed his face with the freezing water, and began his practice anew. From that day, whenever he sat in meditation, the spirit snake was always there beside him. He continued his master's path, kneeling before the Buddha, training amid snow and wind, as though merged with heaven and earth. That peace seemed destined to last a lifetime. But one day, a veiled woman came to the Will Temple, carrying a small child in her arms. She bowed with respect, but would not reveal her face. The monk reached to lift her veil, but she gently stopped him. Everyone, she implied, bears sorrows they cannot speak. He did not press her. The snake in the corner watched it all. That night, the woman lifted her veil to gaze one last time at her child, then fled without turning back. In her haste, she slipped and fell into the ice hole, dying instantly. At dawn, when the child realized his mother was gone, he cried desperately, crawling toward the frozen hole. The monk arrived in time to gather the child, but beneath the ice he saw the woman's face. Lifting her body, he finally unveiled her features before burying her. Then, as he had once done in youth, he hauled a great stone up the mountain. In spring, he had carried stones to atone for killing small creatures. Now he bore one again, believing that because he had carved the hole through which she had fallen, her death was his burden to repay. This time, he no longer clung passively to a Buddha statue. Instead, he chose his own path of penance, walking with determination upon the hard road of redemption. The abandoned child, the woman with unspoken sorrow, the wife betrayed, the master who worried endlessly for his disciple, life was filled with suffering. Who among them could withdraw unscathed? The answer, no one. But this time, he finally transcended himself. Reaching the mountain's summit, he understood at last, the temple stood only within the lake, and the lake within the greater mountains. All was but a speck. The frantic images of fish, frog, and snake flashed again in his mind. Man places himself above all beings, tormenting weaker lives without thought, never realizing that before fate's vastness we are the same, fish, frog, or snake, each burdened by an invisible stone upon our backs. He placed the Buddha statue upon the mountain peak, sat in meditation in its likeness, and let memories fade into silence. If you are trapped in the winter of your life, remember, the ice will one day melt, and the coming spring is always worth waiting for. Alright, that's the end of today's film. If you enjoyed it, please leave a comment with one. If you thought it was just okay, comment too. Thank you so much for watching until the end. Goodbye, and see you again in the next film.